What's up, everybody? It's the Inhuman one here. Today, we're going to discuss the newly released Netflix original Birdbox. We're going to go over several theories that attempt to answer the questions that you will inevitably have after watching the film. What are these unseen creatures and where do they come from? How do they affect us? What are their abilities? And most importantly, how do we defeat them? So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the plot summary so that we can analyze the tidbits of information the film provides us to look into the happenings of the world of Birdbox. The film takes place in two timelines, one taking place 5 years after the onset of the apocalyptic events, and the other taking place during and immediately after the events. To keep a long story short, Mallory, the main protagonist, played by Sandra Bullock, is on her way to visit her OBGYN and check up on her unborn child. It isn't long before we see that Mallory is not the stereotypical expecting mother. She is characterized as a bit cold and hesitant to express her feelings, namely love. This is made painfully clear to the audience when she refers to her pregnancy as a condition, and even more so when she refuses to name her children later in the film. Immediately after her doctor's visit, all hell breaks loose, quite literally. Numerous people begin committing atrocious acts of violence upon themselves. After several scenes of people exhibiting suicidal behavior, we begin to notice a trend. Each of the victims seem to witness something that paralyzes them with fear and gives them an irresistible drive to take their own lives by any means necessary. Amidst all the chaos, Mallory is taken in by a group of strangers and the plot ensues. Over time, each of the survivors meet their demise in various ways, each of which exhibit the abilities of these unseen creatures, which leads us to our first question. What are these creatures? Well, fortunately for us, the film leaves little to the imagination, and Lil Rel Howery's character, Charlie, who happens to be an aspiring novelist, spoon-feeds us nearly all possible origins of the creatures. In his rant about the end of times, he makes mention of various creatures of folklore from all corners of the world. He theorized that these creatures are demons that have come to end humanity once and for all. Interestingly enough, in an interview with the screenwriter, Eric Heiserer, several details that didn't quite translate to the final product were brought to light. Despite the fact that the original novel by Josh Malerman had no clear origin for the creatures, Heiserer made mention that perhaps the creatures were from some other galaxy or dimension, and sought out other sentient beings to share a message. Unfortunately for mankind, however, the creatures could only communicate exclusively using visual means, but the message for some reason shattered our sanity in the process. Now I find this incredibly interesting due to the fact that the creatures seem to have virtually no effect on the criminally insane or those that are already a bit kooky. Each of the encounters with these individuals seems to have a few similarities. In nearly every instance, the insane individuals encourage and even force the unafflicted to remove their blindfolds and bear witness to the creatures. It's like they are desperately trying to ensure that we all see how beautiful it is. This happens once the babies are born, at the grocery store, and on the river. Now what if these creatures really weren't intentionally trying to harm humanity, but rather communicate something that is beautiful beyond words? Maybe the message can't be translated by our simple minds, and our brains are scrambled in the process, perverting our most basic instinct, survival, and forcing us to end our lives. So to answer the first question, these creatures are either demons here to punish mankind, or extra-dimensional beings that are attempting to communicate to mankind and unintentionally inducing irresistible suicidal impulses on a worldwide scale. Which leads us to our second question. How do these creatures affect us? Now I think it's quite simple to conclude that sight is the primary means by which they can affect us, but let's explore that a bit deeper. There was an incredibly interesting scene that shows that even seeing these creatures indirectly through digitized video feeds can still cause the suicidal behavior to ensue. This completely rules out the biochemical possibilities and origins of the creatures and strengthens the argument for the supernatural or extraterrestrial. So what are their abilities? They seem to lack any corporeal form and instead have a sort of shadow-like essence that can lightly influence their surroundings. They are unable to directly inflict harm and seem to move right at ground level, rarely reaching any notable heights. Other abilities include impersonating loved ones, invisibility, rustling leaves, and avoiding doorknobs, since they never seem to be able to get in any sort of shelter unassisted. So how can you defeat what you can't see? These seemingly intangible beings can't be harmed directly and don't seem to require sustenance such as food or water to survive. So if a direct attack is out of the question and a war of attrition, the only logical thing left to do is coexist. But how? Well, the novel has a simple solution. Don't look at them. But how can you ensure that 100% of the time? Gouge your eyes out. However mysterious these creatures are, one thing is certain. They seem to play on the concept of faith. For faith is the ability to believe without seeing. It is only by bearing witness to these creatures that they can do you harm. It's almost as if they're a personified perversion of that concept that has come to punish the masses who possess little faith. And that is going to bring this video to a close. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like. It helps the channel out immensely. And if you want more content like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And until next time, it's the Inhuman One, signing out. Welcome to my universe.